I'm a jealous God. I share all the glory. I get all the glory. I will not share it. That is not my understanding of God beyond in my expanded consciousness, but that's what I was taught. This God was afraid. And that led us to this other thing, particularly around Christianity, and really most other religions, is the profound victim consciousness. The word sacrifice comes from the concept of victimization. Whichever animal or plant was the sacrifice became the victim. Now, why was the sacrifice or victim needed? Because the gods or a god was angry and needed to be placated or vindicated or appeased. So we spend our lives religiously trying to appease an angry God or please a difficult God. And it has created a tension on the planet that makes these kinds of gatherings almost impossible unless you've expanded your consciousness. I wish you could see what we're looking at this morning. So where we are. He's making a list, checking it twice, going to find out who's not here now. Jesus Christ is coming. I have just a couple of scriptures that I want to read to you about both, and then we'll go let Pastor D. And I have both of them in my book, God is Not a Christian, and I have one chapter, as he alluded to, titled, Get the Hell Out of My Bible. And I deal with the fact that the actual word hell does not occur in any of the original texts. That is King James Version, 16th century English, mistranslation of the word Gehenna. Gay meaning gully or gorge or valley of Hinnom. In the book of hell, in Jeremiah 32:35, I'm quoting, they, meaning the Israelites, the children of Israel, built high places for Baal in the valley of Ben Hinnom. If you read it in the King James, it would say Gehenna. That's the only term Jesus used. They, the Israelites, the people of Israel, built high places for Baal in the valley of Ben Hinnom to sacrifice their sons and daughters to Molech, which is an Ammonite deity. Though I never commanded, nor did it enter my mind that they should do such a detestable thing and so make Judah sin. Hell was not created by God. He says here in Jeremiah, this was 500 years before Christ. The people built hell. It was actually the town of Dump in Jerusalem. I've been there 12 times. That particular garbage heap does not exist any longer, even though when Jesus was living, it was there. And he said, this is where the fire goeth not out, King James, and the worm dieth not. The worm's dead, the fire's out. It's actually a park. It's a valley with grass and palm trees. So that particular reference to eternity is not eternal anymore. He was talking about the little rubbish heap. 500 years earlier, the children of Israel, along with others, had created this place. And it burned incessantly. They would put dead animals, rubbish, sometimes carcasses of corpses, bodies. And they came from all over that surrounding area. Well, that place doesn't exist anymore. So the whole concept of eternal damnation is washed away now, literally, because that garden doesn't exist. Now, one other passage is in Leviticus 7 about the devil. Leviticus 7. And they shall no more offer their sacrifices, the King James Version says, unto devils. Now, in the Hebrew, that will be goat gods or goat idols, after whom they have gone a-whoring. This shall be a statute forever unto them throughout their generation. That is a denunciation in the Old Testament, the Jewish Bible, of the devil. We've developed this concept which the Israelites borrowed from some of the pagans, supposedly. That word can be misinterpreted. I don't mean to interpret for the priests down here. Land environmentalists, Mother Earth, they love the land. Heathens is another term you can use for those who developed these gods. They too were afraid. They were into duality. They were afraid of God, some form of God. Now, this is a demonic God and a goat god. And there were all kinds of reasons why the goat god was considered the devil. And those people worshipped it. And then the Israelites worshipped it. And in the book of Leviticus, they're saying, we're not supposed to have anything to do with devils. Now, hell and devils are created in mind. You invent them in consciousness and then invite them into your reality. So that's why I think the one issue that all of us in fundamental Christianity, and the three of us represent those roots, is that we can't get past this fear of a God who will turn us over to the devil, who will accuse us to God, and then that God will take us after the devil's accusation and throw us into hell, and then have the devil superintend us in eternity, weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth. And that'll scare the hell out of anybody, because you're constantly eroded in your consciousness because you're afraid that you might get caught with your work undone. Right? You got to appease this angry God. You got to win other sinners to Christ, or their blood will be required in your hand. Do we need Jesus to protect us from God? You got to have Jesus. If you don't have Jesus, what's going to happen about life? Well, God will get you. God's going to get you if you don't have Jesus. So I need Jesus to protect me from God. See how that messed up our minds? We like Jesus, and as I close, because Jesus seems to be a better God than God, or better at being God. He's kind and gentle. The other one owns hell. Talk to me, somebody. So we need Jesus to protect us from the one that owns hell, who will send us there. Even though, quote unquote, his mercy endures forever. How can mercy endure forever? Your 60-year-old cousin or nephew or son burns with Hitler in hell. Hitler and him at the same time. Hitler also called Jesus his Lord. That's in my book. He confessed to be a Christian, and he said, I'm doing this to serve my Lord Jesus. You don't hear those quotes, but that's written and documented. His hell, at least the Jews, arguably 60 million Jews, and maybe 12 million if you include black people or people of color, and gay people or people with any kind of physical impediment. He included those, they were not of the Germanic race, the germ of purity. That's where the whole concept comes from. So he had them all, could have been as many 12 people. But where did he learn that concept? He thought he was assisting God in destroying the Jesus killers. But at least those 6 to 12 million people stopped hurting. At one point, they died. And supposedly they stopped hurting. But God, according to what we've been taught, I asked my dad one time, what does hell mean? He said, son, that means you will be cooking, but you will never get done. The hell with that, you know. What a frightening concept. At least Hitler's supposed to stop hurting, but that makes God worse than Hitler, doesn't it? Because you're going to be tortured forever. So that whole concept, we've revised our concept, revising and revisioning God. And I think it's safety for all of us. It makes room for love to be unconditional.
It's such a diverse room. There's probably people in here saying, yeah, we've known this for many years. This is just review for us. There's others that might have wandered in here today that say, oh my God, what are they talking about? Don't take my devil away from me. I need that thing. But everyone's welcome. That's what inclusion is. We're all at different places and in different spaces of consciousness. We all change, but we all change at our own pace and in our own space. And so some of us change more quickly. Some of us come to new ideas a little bit more hesitantly. But everybody's in the right place this morning. Just touch your neighbor and say, you okay? You all right? You all right? We talked a little bit last week about levels of thought progression. And this is, you can find most of this in most major world religions, more specifically in Kabbalah. But there's 4 different levels of thought progression. There's the absolute, there is the abstract, there is the 3rd level is a mystic receptivity, and then finally we surrender to this level that we call oneness. Well, when we read religious books, we find a little bit of all 4 of these levels in everything that we read. I had a friend one time who got so fed up with what he was hearing in traditional church, he went out and just studied every religion, and he came back and he said, you know what I found is that every religion has a form and a piece of God, but they also have a piece of craziness. Because it's man-made. There's a little bit of insanity in all religions, and a little bit of God in all religions. And so, wherever you are today, it's all right. We see one thing that King David, who wrote the Psalms in the Bible, I think he vacillated back and forth between consciousness. He was the same man that said, before I was even formed in my mother's womb, I was created in sin and shapen in iniquity. Then later on in the same book of the Psalms, he says, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. You see that he is progressing in consciousness. There's some divine discontent that's going on in his life. This same David said this. He said, if I make my bed in hell, not God sending me to hell, if I make poor choices and it seems like there's hell happening in my life, I think it was Shirley Caesar who said, I'm not going to live in hell and then die and go to hell. People tell me, they ask me, I heard that your church doesn't believe in hell. I said, well, that's not completely true. I experienced a little hell this morning. I had to sit in Atlanta traffic and